Welcome everyone to the special meeting of the City Council and Successor Agency of the City Development Commission, November 23rd, 2020. Let's move to the consent calendar. Are there other items that the council members would like to have held?
Move approval.
Councilmember Wilson?
Mayor, we do have public comment for item number 5.
Item 5.
On consent.
5 and 8, but I suspect Steve also wants 5, so definitely want to have those heard.
Okay, I'm sorry, was there something in addition to 5?
Yeah, 8, please. The grants to the grants to the not-for-profits.
Okay, 5 and 8. Is there a sweep motion on the balance?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Who moved it? I'm sorry, I moved. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kennedy and Councilmember Masuda.
Thank you.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Okay, Councilmember Gordo?
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy?
Yes.
Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember McAustin?
Yes.
Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hampton?
Yes.
Mayor Tornick?
Yes.
The motion is approved without opposition.
All right, thank you. Let's move to item number 5, which is a contract award with regard to the Lower Arroyo Seco Habitat Restoration Program. And we'll give Mr. Malloyan a chance to enter the chamber. And
I believe that Ara will be joining remotely. There he is at his desk. We're having some,
enter the chamber virtually.
We've been having some technical challenges with our audio, and so the best way to ensure that it works is actually to have staff members present remotely, even though they may be in City Hall. So Ara is at his desk, and he's prepared to present and also answer any questions on this matter.
Well, let's find out. Mr. Wilson, did you have any specific questions that you wanted covered here?
I defer to Councilmember Madison, but at my office, and I suspect many other offices, received a lot of correspondence, so I felt like it was our duty to hear this and hear public comment, but I defer to Steve because I suspect he was going to call it up anyway.
Councilmember Madison, did you have any specific questions, or do you want to?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just want to say, and maybe this will help truncate the discussion a bit, that this has been the subject of a lot of discussion. We had a couple of meetings in my district about this. Ara and his team were great to do that. And really what comes before the council now is sort of a compromise from what originally was contemplated being done. I would say that if you review all the correspondence, and there is a whole bunch of it, as Andy mentioned, as well as at least one significant petition that was circulated, there seems to be, two schools of thought. One is pretty strong support of the compromise that staff has come up with, and the diverging view is that that we should go ahead and remove certain pines and eucalyptus trees right now, rather than waiting until the newly planted sycamores sort of take root and reach a certain state of maturation. And just on that point, my question, I guess, Ara, would be, eucalyptus trees are a concern to me because we've had a number of incidents, in Pasadena and beyond where they've fallen. And I just wonder if you could speak to that, just one detail of the wisdom of keeping eucalyptus trees for some future period.
Thank you, Councilmember Madison. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I truly appreciate the opportunity you gave us to staff to be able to do a robust outreach in your district and also to all interested community members. So we truly appreciate that. In regards to eucalyptus trees, I believe we looked at there are 7 eucalyptus trees that we agreed to save at this stage of time. We looked at them We're gonna have an arborist take a look at it again during the construction project or the habitat restoration project. If we need to trim anything at that point to make sure nothing hazardous will happen, that was the wisdom behind it, that these trees will remain till the rest of the habitat is grown to a point that provides equivalent shade and habitat for some of the birds, and then those trees will be cut down. But the original, the plan which we submitted to the community showed those eucalyptus trees were being removed. But it became very an emotional issue with the residents and the visitors of Arroyo, and we made the compromise that we'll keep those. I would say there are 7 in the project area till the project is matured, and then we will remove those eucalyptus trees.
Yeah, so Mayor, if I could, I don't want to get out in front of Andy or my colleagues, but, you know, as long as we keep a close eye on those eucalyptus, I'd be prepared to move the staff recommendation.
And if I maybe add on, I think Ara and Steve, the correspondence also raised, and I appreciate the clarification on the eucalyptus, that sounds like a reasonable solution. There was also, I think, repeated discussion of the Canary Island pine. Maybe we could get a quick update on where that fits into the strategy.
Correct. Within the project area, there are 12 pine trees that UFAC voted on maintaining, and UFAC being the Urban Forest Advisory Commission. When we took the items, we took 72 trees to be removed from project area, and UFAC unanimously approved the project with the exception of maintaining those 12 canary pine trees. They do not pose a hazard at the moment as eucalyptus trees do, but it was more of an aesthetic and from a natural point of view that they're very mature trees and they should not be removed. And staff conceded to that idea. I just want to put perspective on this project. There are hundreds and hundreds of eucalyptus trees in the Arroyo, not just Lower Arroyo, but within the Arroyo. So the area that we're trying to do this project is close to 5 acres, and it's north of the Van de Kamp Bridge. And the main purpose of doing this was when Van de Kamp Bridge was being constructed, they had some impact to the local habitat, and this is kind of to reverse the construction damage that was done to the local habitat and to extend a little bit outside of that. That's the genesis of the project.
Okay, but I understood that, once again, looking at a lot of the correspondence and the staff report, one of the objectives was to remove non-native species. I don't think either the eucalyptus or the canary pine are considered native. Am I correct?
You're correct. By geologic time or local biology, those trees were introduced to this area. They're not local habitat like sycamore and pine tree. Not pine trees, but the other local species of trees that we're going to plant. So therefore, the 2 species that it's in contention is that they're not local habitat. That means they did not exist hundreds of years ago in California, and especially eucalyptus. Eucalyptus was brought from Australia for harvesting purposes, and it does not fit within the ecology of our local habitat. We all agree on that. Staff doesn't disagree with that, and originally we proposed to remove them. But the consensus is, in order to save this project, we have a looming deadline of March 30th of 2021 to finish this project in order to be able to get reimbursed from our county Prop A funds. Therefore, it was basically a decision made to save these trees and then look at them when the existing habitat is maintained to remove them afterwards.
So that statement applies to the canary pines as well as eucalyptus?
The canary pines, no, that doesn't apply to those. The only, we felt that the eucalyptus trees have more hazardous issues that they're more hazardous than the pine trees. The eucalyptus trees shed their limbs. They are also are very they could catch fire, and therefore we wanted to monitor them and remove them after the project is settled.
Okay, Steve, are you good with that solution? I mean, this is definitely your world, but I was surprised how much correspondence even my office received upon the trees. I want to make sure that we've fully vetted the different points of view and that we feel like those who are closer to it.
I mean, Pasadenans care more than most about trees and the tree canopy and about the arroyo. So this was definitely an item of a lot of interest. And, you know, the native, non-native discussion at some point just becomes a philosophical one. You know, if you have a fully mature stand of Canary Island pines, which are throughout Pasadena, they're not just in the arroyo, there are a number of Canary Island pines in Pasadena now. You know, what point does it become native, you know, versus non-native, or even if it's conceded to be non-native, at what point should we not remove those trees? So I think this compromise is really good. I'm grateful to Ara and his staff for their patience. And again, we do have grant money that we don't want to hand back. So I'd recommend that we move forward.
I actually had a couple of questions, Mayor. Or I don't see everybody's face.
Councilmember Kennedy, I see, but just to clean this up, we do have a motion from Councilmember Madison. Is there a second to that motion? Second from Councilmember McAustin. Go ahead, Vice Mayor, and then Councilmember Kennedy. Mr. Hanson.
Hello, can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Oh, so I had, you know, I on the line of what, you know, this was supposed to be originally a, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, now you've dropped out, Tyrone. Mr. Hampton, we can't hear you anymore. Mr. Hampton?
I don't think you can hear us either.
Oh. Mr. Hampton, can you hear us? All right, let's come back to Vice Mayor. Mr. Kennedy, go ahead.
He's still talking. Vice Mayor, can you hear us? No.
Somebody text Tyrone.
Valuable to our world, but
I do, yeah.
This is my question. So if those trees die or eucalyptus falls over, which seems to happen every year, one or two eucalyptus in a arroyo fall over, and actually in Australia they're known as widowmakers, right? Are we removing those trees? Because I know that in the arroyo, the tree dies, there's a stance or policy that basically says that dead trees stay. So will there be a plan to remove those trees and replace them with native trees? Can you hear me?
Yeah, did you hear the question, Ara?
I think I heard the last.
The question is that the eucalyptus trees die, and the policy has been not to remove the dead trees in the arroyo. And the question was whether, if those trees die, whether they would be removed, timely.
Correct. The Arroyo Seco Master Plan designates this as a natural habitat. So what we do is in those cases when a tree dies and if it's cut down, we will do that.
Wait a moment. If the Vice Mayor is asking, hello, he's asked the question, that means he's not hearing us. So why provide an answer?
I yield to the mayor, whatever you want me to do. I can answer it or wait for a vice mayor to come back.
Hold on for a second, Ara. So I thought he was hearing us, we just couldn't hear him. But can the staff try to establish telephonic communication with the vice mayor and find out if he can hear us or what's going on? And let's hold off on the response. And, Councilmember Kennedy, do you have a question?
Yes, I do, until the vice mayor comes back in. My experience with eucalyptus trees has not been very good. I lived at 681 Westgate and was surrounded by eucalyptus trees. I think all of you know that they have a big circumference, and when they break, when there's a different change in temperature, they actually split sometimes, or a branch that could be 3 feet in diameter falls. And so one morning I heard this huge kabang, and the tree across the street at Arroyo and Westgate had fallen in the middle of the street. Thank God it was no car there. Thank God there were no individuals harmed by that tree falling. Now, yesterday I was in the bowl, and in fact, your staff, Ara, was on the golf course removing parts of a eucalyptus tree that had fallen. I think it's a mistake that we leave those eucalyptus in place, and I'll tell you why. It's only a small number. I think we need to remove them. The correspondence I have received focuses on the fact that, in a sense, it's invasive. It's not something that you would customarily have in the Arroyo. Yes, they've been in the Arroyo for a long, long time. That's why they're so huge, but they're dangerous. So from a public safety, for a purely public safety advantage point of view, I believe we need to give staff what they originally requested, and that is the right to just remove them. And UFAC, I think, initially said that was the right way to go as well. Now, as it relates to the Canary Island pines, I don't know technically when a species becomes non-invasive or not a part of the natural habitat. I'm not exactly sure, but I am sure that staff initially recommended that they be removed. And there's another whole layer to this, Mayor, given the fact that we have a group that has been impaneled to help us restore the whole Arroyo from the south to the north to Hahamanga. And one of our council members, or several of our council members, recognize the importance of the Tongvas and the Gabrielinos and all of those important groups that we celebrate. So I would think that with minor modifications that we could get a unanimous vote. And I don't see why it's such a big thing to keep them. I just don't understand that. Maybe staff or a council member who is responsible for that area can just tell me, why is it so important to keep this species when it, at least for sure, the eucalyptus tree is dangerous. It's just simply dangerous. We're only removing a short number.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. City Clerk, how many public comments do we have on this subject?
We have 10.
It might be useful to hear the public comment, let them speak for themselves before we continue this conversation, and perhaps they'll also allow the technological fix with the Vice Mayor. So why don't we hear from the...
I'm back. I don't know if everybody can hear me, but I'm back. But that's totally fine. I'd like to hear the public comment, and then
All right,
I can finish my comments after.
Let's hear the public comment.
Okay.
Barbara Lamprecht, Pasadena. Dear Mayor Tornick, Mayor-elect Gordo, council members, I'm writing to oppose the removal of the trees in the lower Arroyo. This action would rob the city of much-needed greenery. Each tree is beneficial in providing oxygen and absorbing carbon dioxide, and the little replacement trees will take decades to mature, leaving the area open to heat gain. We need the trees because they act as our environmental lungs. In their generosity, they shade us when we walk in the arroyo, which I do often. According to the definition provided in the Arroyo Seco Master Plan Design Guidelines 3.32.030, in quotes, native plants, don't just mean the plants indigenous to the Arroyo Seco, a very narrow spectrum of plants. Instead, the definition also includes plants and trees from, quote, those countries of similar climates that could naturally exist and flourish in the Arroyo Seco in its present ecology, end quote. The trees that have grown there are flourishing. They support one another. In paren, thinking of that remarkable book, The Secret Language of Trees, end of paren. So instead of denuding our precious canopy for which Pasadena is famous, consider supplementing where some age or diseased trees need to be removed. Thank you for your attention. Barbara Lamprecht. Tim Breck, Managing Director of the Arroyo Seco Foundation. The Arroyo Seco Foundation supports habitat restoration in the lower arroyo. Sadly, though, it is difficult to describe this flawed contract as, in quote, habitat restoration, because in order to restore habitat, it is necessary to remove this invasive, non-native plants that crowd out and out-compete the indigenous high-value habitat species that are so important to the birds and wildlife. At the insistence of a small group of disgruntled residents, this contract will preserve 2 large groves of the worst of the weed species, the Canary Island pines and fire-prone eucalyptus trees. These trees are massive and messy and will be very expensive to remove in the future. Pasadena has been given county parks money for habitat restoration. Do the job right. Your vote today sends a signal about how serious Pasadena is about protecting the rare nature of the Arroyo Seco for future generations. We urge you to approve the contract, but to instruct the vendor to remove the Canary Island pines and the eucalyptus trees, as was originally planned by the professional consultants. Should the lower arroyo be a nature preserve or a neighborhood park? Will you vote for a science-based program or for special privilege? Ken Kuehls, Pasadena. I urge the City Council to reconsider retention of eucalyptus trees considering the safety hazard potential. Quote, fallen eucalyptus branches do not necessarily mean that your trees have a rot disease, or any disease for that matter. When eucalyptus trees' branches keep falling, it may mean that the trees are suffering from extended drought. Trees, like the most other living organisms, want to live and will do whatever they can to prevent demise. Branch drop in eucalyptus is one means the trees use to prevent death in times of severe lack of water. A healthy eucalyptus tree suffering from long-term lack of water may suddenly drop one of its branches. The branch will not show any sign of disease on the inside or the outside. It will simply fall from the tree to allow the remaining branches and trunk to have more moisture. This presents a real danger to homeowners since the eucalyptus branches falling on property can cause damage. When they fall on human beings, injuries or death can be the result. Advanced signs of falling eucalyptus branches, it is not possible to predict the falling eucalyptus branches in advance, end of quote. And he references a website, gardeningknowhow.com. Michael Polka, Pasadena. In favor of removing all non-native plants, including all eucalyptus and Canary Island pines, and a paren, in the lower Arroyo Seco for the restoration project. UFAC public comment rebuttal. I heard that the invasive non-native red gum eucalyptus trees are still trying to be saved in the lower Arroyo Seco. There was a public written comment at the September 23rd, 2020 UFAC meeting, and I would like to address the comment. The public comment was in favor of saving some of the eucalyptus trees because a beloved rancher planted them in the arroyo. But we should seek honor in the space, not the rancher, especially when we seek to honor him by retaining non-natives that wreak havoc on the ecosystem. Surely destroying the habitat was not what the rancher intended. Eucalyptus trees are known for their ability to suck up all the moisture in the area, so this was probably the rancher's intent when they were planted. There are plenty of other eucalyptus trees along the hillside of the arroyo, along the freeways, and since those are not part of the Lower Arroyo Restoration Project, those will still be there. Glenn Cami, Pasadena. Clarification on defining, in quotes, native plants for the lower arroyo. Some correspondents referred to the Arroyo Seco Public Lands Ordinance and, in quote, Arroyo Seco Master Plans hyphen design guidelines, end of quote, in which the term, in quotes, native plants, in quotes, includes plants from, in quotes, countries of similar climates that could naturally exist and flourish in the Arroyo Seco in its present ecology, end of quote. However, there are two issues with this. One, the species in question don't work well for the present ecology. And two, the, quote, Arroyo Seco Master Plan / Lower Arroyo Master Plan, end quote, differs from the broader document specifying for the Lower Arroyo. Quote, use only native plants indigenous to the area in any habitat restoration activities, end quote. That's section 1.6. The, quote, Lower Arroyo Master Plan, end quote, even directly clarifies the definition of, quotes, native plants from the Arroyo Seco Public Lands Ordinance. Quote, this is an expansive definition, as some Southern California indigenous plants would never have occurred in the Lower Arroyo, but could survive there now. Appropriate native plants for restoration purposes are those plants indigenous to the Arroyo Seco watershed, end quote, referring section 3.2.2. This project is a habitat restoration, thus the invasive allopathic? Canary Island pine and Australian red gum eucalyptus don't seem to fit the native, in quote, native plant definition per the Lower Arroyo Master Plan.
Michael Dodge, Los Angeles resident. I'm writing in support of the Lower Arroyo Habitat Restoration Program as an important local example of how the transformation / rehabilitation of the landscape can restore local flora and fauna to combat climate change and symbolically atone for past colonization. I do, however, strongly object to keeping the invasive trees from the Canary Islands and Australia in the city's only designated nature preserve. By not removing these trees, it sets unfortunate precedents that sets the standard for restoration too low and symbolic message of remaining colonization. Future projects looking to previous examples need to be able to see a fully carried out project that doesn't stop short. I sincerely hope the council approves the program, but orders that the eucalyptus and Canary Island pines should also be removed. Pasadena has a chance to be a leader as an example of both native plant restoration and making a symbolic gesture for colonial reparations. Thomas Priestley, Pasadena resident. I am a resident of the Lower Arroyo neighborhood who enjoys spending time in the Lower Arroyo Seco. I have reviewed the plans for the Lower Arroyo Restoration Project and have visited the proposed restoration area to look at the trees proposed for removal as part of the project. I want to state my strong support for approval of the contract for the restoration project, but with the proviso that all of the non-native trees the palm identifies for removal be removed. There should be no reprieve for the large eucalyptus and Canary Island pine trees, whose retention will undermine the success of the restoration. I understand that there are those making a case for their retention, but that case is sentimental, does not reflect scientific analysis, and is not consistent with the policies the city has adopted designating that part of the arroyo as a nature preserve. The sentimental arguments for retaining these trees do not justify the impacts caused by their retention. These impacts include occupying space that could be used to plant native species, changes to this soil that hinder the establishment of native plants around them, fire dangers, and aesthetic incompatibility with the natural landscape setting. Thomas Seifert, Pasadena resident. The La Casita Foundation was made aware of the plans for the Lower Arroyo Habitat Restoration Project on July 20th, 2020. Representatives met with city staff, extensively toured the Lower Arroyo with both staff and the consulting restoration ecologist, and studied the long history of the Lower Arroyo. We also participated in all of the public committee, and town hall meetings held from August through November. Congratulations and thanks go to city staff and the consultants for both their insights and knowledge, and especially their patience. The arroyo is a complex subject with many strongly held opinions throughout the community, and one size most certainly does not fit all, but the project plan being presented is solid. I strongly recommend that you vote to adopt the staff recommendation. Diane Philibosian, Pasadena. I support the staff report and recommendation regarding the funding of the Lower Arroyo Habitat Restoration Project. I have participated in several town hall meetings, tours of the area led by staff, and am eager to see the project go forward as planned. Staff has been earnest in reaching out to the public, listening extensively, and engaged in the difficult task of consensus building. This should not be a controversial project. It has been extensively vetted. With the assurance of long-term maintenance, I am confident that the funding for the project is appropriate and that the project is ready to proceed on schedule. Ann Scheid, Pasadena resident. I urge you to support the staff proposal before you today, which results from consultation with members of the community and which includes the retention of a few mature trees, so that the site is not completely denuded of large trees and the shade and habitat they provide to wildlife. I would like to bring to your attention the following wording in the Arroyo Seco Public Lands Ordinance approved by the council in 1990, which was incorporated into the Arroyo Seco Master Plans, revised version approved by the City Council in 2015. Quote, native plants, end quote, means those plants historically known to be indigenous to the Arroyo Seco of Pasadena and nearby arroyos of similar ecology, and also those indigenous plants of Southern California or countries of similar climates that could naturally exist and flourish in the Arroyo Seco in its present ecology. Article 1, City of Pasadena, Arroyo Seco Master Plans, Design Guidelines. And I should also report, Mayor, that the City Clerk's Office received 37 letters providing comments and or expressing support for the Lower Arroyo Seco Habitat Restoration Project, but stating concerns regarding 2 specific species of trees to be retained as part of the proposed contract, as well as a petition containing 800 signatures, of which 206 are Pasadena residents that share the same sentiments. And 5 letters were received expressing support for the proposed contract as presented.
I had not finished my comments, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Ms. Kennedy, and then we'll go to the Vice Mayor.
Can you please, for the record, share in a little bit greater detail or highlight the 200 letters so we'll get a sense of what you were communicating to us? Were you suggesting that the 200 letters were in support of staff's recommendation, less the Canary Island pines and the eucalyptus trees?
Can you turn this on? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Kennedy, one more time. Can you repeat that? Were you,
No problem.
that question?
I just wanted to know of those 800 letters. You
yes.
said 200 were from Pasadena residents, and I'm not sure exactly what was being conveyed. Are you saying that support?
They were actually, they had an issue with the 2 trees, the specific species, the eucalyptus and Canary Island pine. Those 2 species being not being removed from the project.
So thank you very much. So the weight of public comment and what was just shared with the council is news to me, that 800 folks who are paying attention, 200 of which are Pasadena residents, support staff recommendation, but would like the removal of the Canary Island pines and the eucalyptus trees. There seems to be, as Councilmember Madison suggested, a compromise approach. I would suggest, by my own observations yesterday and my experience when I lived on the Arroyo, I actually lived on the Arroyo, that it is wise to remove the eucalyptus trees now and the Canary Island pines. But here's my question, Mayor. It's different from this line. I would just simply like to recommend to the successful bidder that, as a Pasadena company, G Team Landscape, that you would do everything within your power to hire some of the young people in Northwest Pasadena to help with the fulfillment of the contract. And then I'd like to know if staff can provide the council with the name of, or names of the principal of that company. And I'd also would like to compliment staff that we have found a Pasadena-based company to do the work.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
There was a question in there, and that is the principal.
Councilmember Kennedy, I will convey the name of the contractor to you via email. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I will do that.
It's not just for my benefit. I want the whole council to know who they are.
Aren't they listed on the TPA?
It's not required to put a TPA.
Since this
It
is
was a competitive bid, there's no TPA form.
Sorry, no TPA.
Public Works does have that information, we can share it with we share it with the council subsequently.
No, I gave you adequate notice, not today, out of respect.
Council member, I requested it from Aura, he emailed it to me earlier, and I should have it here, and if I can find it, I'll send it straight away.
No, I want you to communicate it in open session. I gave you adequate notice, and I think that's fair.
I don't have it in front of me, sir, I need to find it.
Okay, fine, thank you.
All right, while the discussion goes on, we'll see if we can come up with that. Or you might ask staff if they can generate it as well.
Yeah, if you give me 30 seconds, we'll find that.
Well, let's go back to the Vice Mayor, Mr. Hanson.
So I also had concerns with the non-native species of trees being in the Arroyo, especially if we're calling this a restoration project. It sounds like there was a compromise that's been made as those trees, I guess, as they age out, or if we have an arborist go in there and look at which trees look like they may be diseased, or which trees maybe need to be removed for safety purposes. Or is that what the plan is, to actually assess all of the trees, especially those that are non-native, to see if any of them need to be removed? Because every year it seems like a eucalyptus is falling in the Arroyo.
Yes, Vice Mayor, thank you very much for that question. As part of this effort, we're going to assess the remaining eucalyptus trees to an extent that in order to keep them even for the short period of time, we may trim them so they don't pose any damage. Also, these trees are going to be away from the main trails. So we're kind of assessing that also. That was one of the decision factors to make sure that if limbs are falling, they will not be on any close trails. Councilmember Kennedy, I have that information in front of me if you would like. The name of the gentleman or the main contact is Rodolfo Rudy Garcia. He is the owner and president of G-Team Landscape Construction Company.
Thank you.
And they're a Pasadena-based business, correct?
That's right. They are on Sierra Grande Street. That's their main address, and they have been successful in another project for the city. We've used them before. We're very comfortable with the performance.
Well, I have to say that I am very pleased to hear that this restoration project, or I don't know if some people would call it restoration, this project is actually going to a Pasadena-based business. But as you said, you will have an assessment of those trees. Also, there is a policy that basically says anything in the Arroyo, a tree dies in the Arroyo, we just leave it, right?
That's correct, Vice Mayor.
If they're non-native, they shouldn't be.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was saying, if they are non-native, they should not be left in the Arroyo. They should be removed.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think the biology or the thinking behind this, when a tree falls and it's not obstructing any pathways and it's safe, we allow that tree to decompose and provide food and habitat for other creatures. That has been the thinking behind it. Even though they're non-native species, they still provide in their dead status, they provide nutrients for the local fauna and fauna.
Well, I appreciate that that answer, but I think an arborist or just Google searching would tell you that eucalyptus trees are actually considered not great for our soil because they are some sort of poison that they let off that will prevent other plants from growing. So we're trying to spark non-native plants to give them that ability to be able to grow and flourish. Then the species that are non-native should be removed when they die or if they fall.
You're
And
very
maybe
correct.
there needs to be an update for that policy so that we have that clearly done. Maybe tonight's not the time to have that discussion, but
Thank you, Vice Mayor. You're correct that the eucalyptus trees, when they're alive, they produce some acidic, they have acidity in their leaves, and it doesn't allow anything to grow on the canopy of their trees, contrary to other species, which allows grass to grow and other habitat to flourish. I will check with our biologist, and I'm sure what I answered you was based on what I've learned before, that when they're in that decaying status, they don't produce the acidity that they're alive. But I want to mention that during this process, during this project, we're going to remove those trees that are invasive out of the project area. There would be some trees will be used, the limbs will be used for seeding or something like that. But you're correct that we can look at our policy and see if the invasive species do cause harm to the local ecology.
well, I mean, you basically said that that when they're alive, they are.
Correct.
That's probably the reason why they should be removed.
As far as local habitat goes, they're invasive. That's by definition. They tend to, by their physical capabilities, having acidity in their leaves, they cause no other species to grow in that vicinity of their surrounding area, wherever their canopy is. That's what I was trying to say. But also I mentioned that when they decay, they don't have that problem. But I will check with the biologist, and if there are trees that needs to be removed, we'll remove it from this project area.
I clearly understand what you're saying. They're dead. They may not be a cause issue. But I'm saying we're trying to spur the growth of native plants and native species in the area. Your argument is basically saying you're arguing why we should remove the eucalyptus plants, because while they're alive, they are preventing natural growth of native species of plants.
That's correct, Vice Mayor. The original plan intended to remove them, but this is a compromise, short period time compromise to allow those species to remain in the project area till the rest of the trees have taken hold as we are watching them.
Vice Mayor, if I may, Mara, if I may, Vice Mayor, I just want to clarify, the staff's original recommendation was to remove those non-native trees. And that was what we were moving forward with. We shared that information with community groups, with UFAC, and then there were some in the community who, while acknowledging that those are non-native species, essentially like the trees nevertheless, and under the auspice of Mr. Madison's office, we were able to work out the compromise that's before you today. But I want to be clear, the staff was not advocating to not remove the native trees. That was the original intent. But in order to keep the project moving forward, take advantage of the grant funds and achieve something, this compromise was worked out. And we think it's a reasonable compromise. If the council wanted to take a different approach, certainly that's the council's discretion, but we think we've come to a good place.
Okay. No, I understand. Thank you. Thank you all for your answers as well.
All right, I think we understand the metes and bounds of this, and, there's, while it's tempting to sort of, try to fine tune this, I think there's been a lot of work done trying to find a compromise, and I think the staff has done a good job with the council member's, office in trying to craft that. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this?
I have a question for the council member representing that district. Council member.
Could you speak up a little, John?
Sorry, apologize. Council member Madison, I'd like to know how strongly you feel that we've come to the right place, given the fact that we're talking about two invasive species, and the fact that it appears that they're going to be removed anyway. My major complaint at this moment is my knowledge about the eucalyptus. It's dangerous. And I saw city staff at the golf course, and actually there were lots of golfers around that tree, and it had fallen. And so I'm not sure if it's wise to wait. I'd like to vote for it, Mr. Madison, but I think it's more prudent to make a statement about the danger of at least one of the species. The other species, apparently, I think eventually will be removed as well. But would you entertain in any way moving the matter forward without those two species?
Problem, John, is that we're trying to distill into one out of a dozen or so consent calendar items, something that took literally hundreds of man and woman hours to get to this point. In terms of non-native, there are a number of parts of this project that will remove non-native species. But in the case of these two species of trees, you're talking about very large, substantial, fully grown trees. And there was tremendous pushback from some in the community about the wisdom of simply going in with a chainsaw and removing these beautiful, massive, full-grown trees on the basis that they're non-native. And after all, what does that mean? 40, 50, 60-year-old trees are non-native? So what? We heard also about, owls that nest in those very trees. So, this is a complicated discussion. I think the compromise that was reached was the right one. We will remove the eucalyptus and the Canary Island pine, as painful as that will be for some, once the sycamores, which are quote-unquote native, have taken root and began to flourish. My admonition early on when I made the motion to ARA was, on the eucalyptus, let's be really sure that there's no safety risk. And if there is, let's take those as well. But my biggest concern is, we're going to lose this grant money if we don't approve a project and get going. So that's the basis for the motion.
So, okay, so approximately how many years away are we from removing out of the eucalyptus, the reference eucalyptus?
Assuming there's no safety issue, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. So we need to watch. I cannot give you an exact time, but 5 to 7 years.
20 years? Are we 10 years? Are we 5 years?
I would say 5 to 7 years is when we expect the sycamores to grow to a substantial size. If at that time we can reassess our this condition, and then we can make that decision at that time. But I believe there are some sycamore trees that were planted around the casting pond, and if anybody wants to go see them, they were planted in 1990s and they're fully grown. So that's a good indication. They are not as fast growing as eucalyptus, but they're going to do good. So I would say 5 to 7 years, we'll go back and assess that. But as to Councilmember Madison's admonishment to me, we're going to assess them for safety now, and if they need to be removed, we'll remove them based on that condition. or we may trim them to make sure they're safe and they're not going to shed any limbs.
So, Councilmember Madison, for certain, at some point with this motion, they will in fact be removed. That's accurate?
That was our consensus, that when these trees...
I got it from you as the staff. I'm asking, is that Mr. Madison's understanding as well?
Yeah, that's in the staff recommendation that I moved.
Okay.
Can I just clarify, Steve said that the canary pines also would be removed once the sycamores grew in. Steve, is that correct? You're nodding. Ara, is that your understanding as well?
Well, I was not offering the pines to be removed after 5 to 7 years. But
I just want to make sure, as Steve said, this is way too complicated and too many discussions have happened, but I do think we need to be clear with the public as to what is going to happen. So I'm just asking that we get clarification, because I think your and Steve's statements are slightly different there.
I'm fine with that. My understanding was that the compromise did involve those two species, but if that's your understanding, Ara, that's fine.
that was my understanding, to keep the eucalyptus till the stuff, the existing planting takes hold. The pine trees were not in the discussion. We can go back to the community, have that discussion later on, but for time is an essence for this project. We need to move forward with the construction and planting of this tree. We have only a couple of months left to complete the job. So afterwards, we can always come back and revisit, depending on how we do maintain these trees, and also how the nature holds to these trees. So we need to reassess them as we move forward.
Your clarification causes me to move in a different direction. I was going to support the motion because of the hard work that the constituents involved, and I was under the impression that both the eucalyptus and the Canary Island pines would eventually be removed. That is not the case. I feel very comfortable at this point in voting no, but I want you to know, Councilmember Madison, I was willing to go for the compromise that we had just simply talked about, but ours clarification is different from our understanding. Thank you.
I just like to, I need a clarification. Is there anything in the motion that, that's before us that does make it clear about the removal of the eucalyptus once the, the eucalyptus once the sycamores are of a size? What's in the motion that we're adopting that conveys that?
I moved the staff recommendation. So,
But that's my point.
yeah.
In the staff report, it's strictly speaking, it's not in the motion, but it's included in the corpus of the staff report. Is that right?
I'm looking at it.
Correct. If council wishes to reinforce that the eucalyptus trees will be removed, we have no problem with you extending that or adding it to the motion of approval of this contract.
Yeah, I mean, typically, I'm just concerned because the motion doesn't reference it, and I don't know if the staff report will be dispositive. So, but that is the understanding, right, Councilmember Madison, in your motion?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or clarification required?
With the clarification that was just made about the eucalyptus, that's a formal part of the motion, Steve?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know, the seconder needs to acknowledge that too.
Yes, fine.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's have a roll call.
Hold on. Okay. Let's see. Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Gordo?
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy?
No.
I'm sorry, did you say no? I didn't hear you.
No.
I didn't hear you. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Madison?
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda?
Yes.
Councilmember McAustin?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Councilmember Wilson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hampton?
Yes.
Mayor Tornick?
Yes.
Motion passes with 7 votes in favor and 1 against.
Thank you, and my thanks, really to, I know how hard the staff had to work on this, and the residents, and the Arroyo Seco Foundation for all of you weighing in. This is a very Pasadena kind of controversy, in terms of really both sides having legitimate points of view and advocating for it effectively, and everyone concerned loving the arroyo and the environment. So so let's just get this done now and beautify the area. Thank you, Ara.
Thank you very much, all of you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, let's move to